Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show dedicated to the chronic dieter and self-sabotager who is sick of starting over every Monday, of thinking about food and her body all day long, of feeling guilty every time that she eats, and who just wants to free up that mental space, that time, that energy on things that truly matter and that moves your life forward. I'm Sabrina Magna. I'm going to be your host every week. I am a holistic health coach, founder of the Food Freedom Academy, business owner, and total enthusiast when it comes to all things personal development. And I'm so excited to be in your ear every week with a fun little mix of solo episodes, guest interviews with experts in all fields of nutrition, exercise, psychology, behavior change, mindset, personal development, and having conversations with friends about topics that really matter, like diet culture, body image, intuitive eating, and just those hard topics that no one talks about as we're all figuring life out along the way. Now, one thing about me is that I am a recovering perfectionist, and I have been wanting to start this show for years now because I am someone who listens to podcasts all day long. I would say that 95% of the growth that I've had in the past couple of years can be attributed to the podcasts I listen to. And so I want to be able to be in your ear and educate, motivate, inspire you every single day to see things through a different lens, to learn, to grow, and to become the best version of yourself. So since we are going to get up close and personal, I might be in your ear as you drive to work, as you do your workouts, as you go for your walks. I wanted to tell you a little bit about me, my story, and why I do what I do. So I struggled with years of fighting disordered eating, emotional eating, restricting, and then binging, which eventually turned into orthorexia, which is a non-classified eating disorder that is characterized by an unhealthy obsession with eating clean and with exercise. And all of my food and body struggles stems from, I would say, a mix of a few different things. Definitely our culture being obsessed with thin bodies, making us believe that thin bodies are healthy bodies no matter what. And it was also triggered by my upbringing as a synchronized swimmer. So if you're not familiar with the sport, it's a very intense sport. It is similar to ballet or gymnastics, where your worth is pretty much wrapped up in how you look, which is not surprising considering you're in a tiny piece of fabric for most of the time. And if you've ever looked at the Olympic synchronized swimming team, everyone looks the same. They are tall, they're skinny, their thighs are the size of your arm. And so given that I was in the sport for 8 years of my life at a pretty high level, it quickly got ingrained in my mindset without even me realizing that the size of your body or how your body looks determines how worthy you are. And had it not been for synchronized swimming, we get that message everywhere, whether we're on Instagram or we see the tabloids or we see the way that people talk about celebrities or other people. So I was a swimmer until I was 16 years old, where I eventually decided that I wanted to retire from the sport. It was taking a toll on my body. It was taking a toll on my social life. It was taking a toll on my self-esteem. And when I retired from the sport, I no longer trained 25 hours a week. And so, of course, my body started changing. I started getting curvy. I started seeing stretch marks. I started seeing things in my body that I was not used to. And especially because I had this very toxic mindset around what my body should look like. Gaining weight was the scariest thing for me at the time. And so I did what anyone else would do, which is I started cutting back. I started thinking I was doing something wrong. This is why I must be gaining weight. I must be eating the wrong things. I must be eating too much. And so I would spend all of my time online researching different ways to lose weight, things that I should be cutting out, how many calories I should be eating. I started tracking every single thing that I ate into MyFitnessPal, started being terrified of eating carbs. I mean, I was putting sweet potatoes into a toaster and then putting avocado, but only a quarter of an avocado, and then eggs on top because I was so scared of eating bread because I thought that bread would make me fat and unhealthy. And so this mindset around food, which wasn't present when I was swimming because I didn't have the fear of weight gain because I was training so much. But this toxic mindset around food started around the age of 16 years old, and it followed me for about 8 years of my life. And during those 8 years, I just periodically moved from one extreme, which was restriction, not eating, eating 1,200 calories, depriving myself, to the other extreme, which was binging and eating everything in sight and having no rules whatsoever. And of course, not only was this extremely unhealthy for my body, I was constantly gaining and losing the same weight over time, gaining more and more weight. There was chronic inflammation in my body because I was so stressed out. I was stressed every time I sat down to eat. Eating was no longer this enjoyable experience. It was clouded by anxiety around how many calories were on my plate. And if I got to the end of the day and I had already used up all of my calories, well, what do I do now? Do I starve myself? Do I go to bed hungry? And a lot of the times I would, and it would keep me up at night. And so I was doing all of this in the name of health. I really, truly thought that I had to be perfect, that if I cut out all of these foods, then I was doing the right thing, and that eventually my eating habits would just get better. Maybe if I cut out sweets, then my cravings for sugar would go away. I can't even tell you how many no desserts January I would do every year because of how bad I felt because I would eat so much over the holidays. And no matter how hard I tried, no matter how disciplined I tried to be, how much willpower I tried to exert, how many things I tried to cut out, I just felt like my habits around food got more chaotic, more tumultuous, more unhealthy over time. I had cravings 24/7. My entire day was spent thinking about food, about my next meal. I was terrified to go to restaurants because I didn't know how many calories were going to be in my food. I didn't know how it was going to be prepared. And I was scared of eating in front of other people, of losing control, of the judgment that might come if I had a piece of pizza in front of friends, because I always thought of myself as the healthy girl, the one who doesn't eat anything unhealthy, the one who always shows up at the gym at 6 a.m. and does a 2-hour long workout. And it was praised. I mean, people, if I lost weight, people would make comments which only triggered my desire to keep doing what I was doing, which was inherently very unhealthy. But I didn't recognize that because we live in a culture that normalizes disordered eating patterns. It normalizes intermittent fasting, where you go long periods starving yourself and denying yourself food even if you're hungry, where it's normal to talk about skipping meals or feeling the need to burn off a donut because you feel like you've done something quote unquote bad. All of these toxic mindsets around food and our bodies are the norm. And so it's so easy to get caught up and stay in this cycle for some their entire life because no one says anything otherwise. And so how did I get out of this? After, like I said, years and years of trying to better my eating habits, trying to feel better, I just went further down the rabbit hole. I was binging more often. I was constantly fighting cravings, and I was socially isolating myself. At this point, I was losing friends because, like I said, I was terrified of eating in front of other people, and eating is this great source of connection and of joy. And so when you lose that, you end up staying at home and being sad because you're losing all of that connection. And so what I would do is I wouldn't go out, and then I would stay home because I was scared of eating. But then I was so sad from not going out that I would end up binging at home instead. And it all kind of came crashing down on me one Christmas break. And I remember I was sitting in it's such a vivid memory where I was sitting in my parents' basement, and it was cold and it was dark. And I had always had this dream of traveling, of going especially to Italy. There's something about that country that just had this lust to it. And I've always wanted to go to Italy. I've always wanted my life to be traveling all over the world. And here I was at a perfect time in my life. I had the upcoming summer, that I didn't have anything keeping me in Montreal, which is where I live. I didn't necessarily have a job or a relationship. It was a perfect time to travel. And yet there was something holding me back from going, which was I was terrified of gaining weight. I was barely eating carbs at the time, and we all know that Italy is the land of pizza and pasta and bread and cheese. And so I was terrified to go and not have full control over what I was eating, not be able to count every single calorie. And it was after some deep contemplation and realizing that, oh my God, I'm holding myself back from traveling, from taking pictures, from making memories with friends, with family. I'm constantly in my head because I'm afraid of gaining weight. I'm afraid of eating. I'm afraid of enjoying food. And it was in that moment where I realized if something doesn't change now, if I don't face my fears, if I don't change my mindset around food and around my body, then one thing's for sure is that nothing will ever change. And I'm young and I've got this whole life ahead of me and all of these dreams and all these goals and these memories and experiences I want to live. And if I keep living the way that I'm living, then I'm going to wake up at 80 years old with a lot of regret, a lot of what ifs, a lot of wishing I could go back in time and shake 20-year-old me and just think, what are you doing here? And so I decided that even if I felt absolutely terrified, I was going to book a trip to Italy. I was actually going to go live there for an entire summer as an au pair, which is basically a nanny. You live in an Italian family's, like a host family's home. They feed you, they house you, and then you take care of their kids in exchange. And I was absolutely terrified when I booked that flight, not only because I knew no Italian, I was going there all alone. I didn't know anyone in Italy, but mostly I was terrified because I had such a tight grip, tight control on what I was eating at the time. I can list off the calorie content of pretty much every single food that goes into the MyFitnessPal database. And I knew that when I was going there, that wasn't going to be an option anymore, that I was going to have to let go of some of that control. And I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my body. I didn't trust myself around food. But I knew that I had to put myself in that uncomfortable situation, in that uncomfortable position, if I wanted to change and if I wanted to grow. Because when I looked at the life I wanted to live, let's say I wanted to get married or have kids, I couldn't see myself on a Sunday morning eating maple syrup with my kids without feeling anxious or counting the amount of sugar there's in there. And I knew that's not the kind of life I wanted to live. And so I got myself to Italy, and the very first thing that the host grandma, the nonna, said to me when she saw me was, "Oh my God, you're so small. Let's get you some food." And I was underweight, at least for what my body is meant to be at. And I right away thought, "Oh my God, this is gonna be hard. And I regretted my decision in the moment. And as I started getting indoctrinated into Italian culture, into the culture of eating in Italy, that entire summer completely changed my life. It changed my relationship with food, with my body, because when you're in Italy, no one is dieting. No one is saying that because they ate a cookie tonight, they have to go at the gym tomorrow and burn it off. No one even talks about the calorie content in food or feels bad for eating pizza and pasta in the same meal. Everyone is there to enjoy food. There is this culture of pleasure, of gratitude, of making food feel special. They take their time. They use it to connect. And yet, Italians are some of the healthiest people in the world. When you look at actually the healthiest populations in the world, the French being in there as well, they're the ones who have the least fear and concern with what they're eating. And my entire paradigm, my entire perspective on food had to completely shift that summer, because I realized, oh my God, I can eat bread. I can eat cheese. I can eat enough, right? Like when I was eating probably 1,200 calories when I lived in Montreal, when I was there, I was no longer counting calories, but I was probably eating twice as much or 3 times as much as I was. And surprisingly enough, I felt better. I felt more energetic. I was able to go for runs and actually have the stamina. I was less moody, less irritable because I wasn't hungry all the time. And surprisingly enough, my body stayed the same. I didn't gain all of this weight that I was afraid of. And if anything, that summer felt the healthiest I had ever felt, even when I was counting my calories and cutting the carbs and doing all these things that I thought I was doing for health. And so when I came back from that summer, when I flew back to Montreal, I knew, I was like, I need to spread this message. I need to help people see differently because I know that I'm not alone. I know that other people feel this way. And I don't think I knew just how many until I made it my career and I started coaching women and getting really deep into the world of diet culture and intuitive eating and realizing how many millions of women around the world struggle with a unhealthy relationship with food and are being convinced that the way to be healthy is to do the Weight Watchers or to count the calories or low carb or keto or intermittent fasting. All of those fad diets that make you overly obsessed with food, more stressed out, feel guilty, and in the end, they only trigger more unhealthy patterns around food. I learned how restriction, both emotional and physical restriction, actually triggers the urge to binge and overeat and emotionally eat, the very thing that people are trying to avoid when they go on diets. And so at the time when I came back from Italy, I had no formal training. I just had my experience, but I knew that I needed to help people. And at the time, I was doing a bachelor degree in financial math and economics. So that didn't really fulfill that passion for helping people, sitting at a desk, filling out a spreadsheet with numbers all day long, just not for me. And so I decided I don't care how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to help people. And so I decided I'm going to get certified. So I got certified as a holistic health coach, and I'm going to get educated and I'm going to help people heal their relationship with food so that they no longer have to stay stuck where I was for years of my life. So fast forward a couple of years, and I have learned so much just by working with my clients and participating in summits and just researching more and more about the effects of diet culture, and not only the effects of how we think about food, how we view food, our relationship with food, but how we think about our own bodies, how we think about ourselves, our abilities, and the beliefs that we have created throughout our life, usually starting in childhood. I have been obsessed with learning how our brain and our bodies connect and how powerful our thoughts are. And as I started growing my business, I faced a lot of my own obstacles, a lot of my own challenges, because starting a business is scary. It makes you face your limiting beliefs. It makes you do things that make you incredibly uncomfortable and step out of your comfort zone. And so if I hadn't done that work on myself to realize how powerful your own thoughts are, I definitely would not have been able to be here starting a podcast, having a extremely successful business, and I wouldn't have been able to help my clients step out of that comfort zone, because that comfort zone where you are constantly doing the same thing over and over again, which is dieting, it's uncomfortable. Absolutely, it's uncomfortable, right? You're not happy. Most women that I work with tell me that they're struggling with depression and anxiety and low self-esteem and low self-worth. I mean, it affects every single area of your life. When you are constantly thinking about food and your body, you can't fully engage in life. You can't really be present. So it affects your relationships and your kids and your friends and how you feel about yourself. And so, yes, of course, it absolutely is very uncomfortable. But at the same time, it's comfortable because it's what we know. It's what feels controlled. It's what we expect. It's what we know what's going to happen. When we start a diet, we know what's going to happen. We're going to go through that honeymoon period and all things are going to go well and you're going to be losing weight and you think, oh my God, this is working. And then eventually you're going to fall off track. And eventually you're going to fall right back to where you started. We know that it's predictable. And human beings like knowing what to expect. And so that's why people do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And so if I hadn't done that work to study psychology and our mindsets and our habits and why we do the things that we do, then I wouldn't be able to help my clients in the way that I have. And so this is really what this podcast is about, is to bring you into my world and to share with you the thousands and thousands of hours that I have spent researching and working with clients to better understand how powerful your brain is, how your relationship with food, your relationship with yourself, your body, is really at the core of every single behavior, every single action you take, whether that's your eating habits or your exercise habits or self-care or the way you interact with people. It's really the foundation of everything that you do. And so that is why I'm so excited to bring to you conversations about the things that really matter, not telling you what to eat and what not to eat, not giving you the specifics about calories and food, because all of that happens on the outside and all of that is external. And the truth is that no long-term sustainable change happens on the outside. It happens from within. And so I hope that you get a lot of value from the episodes I'm going to share with you. And if you do, then make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. So whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and that you share this with a friend if you know someone who might be struggling with constantly dieting or low self-esteem or self-sabotage, and you think that this podcast would be valuable for them. So I will be coming into your ear every Wednesday with a brand new episode. Like I said, whether that's going to be a solo episode, an expert guest, or just conversations with people in my life to bring you into my head and share my perspective on different topics that are largely unspoken or not talked about enough. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you, and I cannot wait to get started on this amazing journey. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.